All right, so I'm here with Kyle Wiktor. Kyle is the counter for the Indiana Longshore Flight Count, which takes place each year at Indiana Dunes State Park. And Kyle is the person who's recently seen common ravens in Indiana, and really the most recent person since 1953 to see common ravens in Indiana. So. It's exciting to chat with you, Kyle, and thank you for taking some time out.
Oh, yeah, great to talk with you, Bob.
So, tell me about what happened last week and the observation that took place on the 16th.
Sure. And I'll mention that it was kind of interesting that on March 13th of 2019, I had one flyby common raven over at the tower over there, and that very likely was the same raven that was seen a few days prior at Warren Dunes State Park in Michigan. But I just figured it was kind of a fluke. This may never happen again because, we just saw uh, quite a long period of time for no records of common raven in Indiana. And then, what do you know? It's March 16th, 2020, and I look over to the east and see this dark corvid, kind of large, flying on in, and hear it vocalize a few times, and sure enough, it was a common raven, and you know, I, I'm thinking, wow, this is really happening again, huh? So, and unlike the time the previous year when it was a flyby, maybe I got to see it for 10 seconds or so. I probably got to see that one for about a full minute and was able to get over 40 seconds of video footage of it. And it flew from east to west. Crow came on in. The crow really didn't like that raven, and it proceeded to chase off the raven.
Yeah,
So
probably
that's what
hadn't seen
happened on
one for, probably never seen one before.
there's a good chance some of these crows down here have never seen ravens in their lives. So yeah.
But interesting how the old instinct maybe kicked in. But what's your experience with the species in the past? You must have been around ravens uh, at some point in your life, in your birding life, to be even ready to identify one in a place like Indiana.
Sure. I've encountered them many times in their usual expectable range. And they're not really thought of as a super migratory species. I'm sure they do disperse a bit, but I do recall being up by Mackinac City, Michigan in the fall and watching, a couple small flocks of ravens fly all the way across the Straits of Mackinac. So, I think some of them must make at least some short distance movements. And, from up there, definitely I saw many crows flying across the Straits of Mackinac. So, I've definitely seen both species quite a few times. And, um, when you see them together rather than separate, it's all the more easier to see the difference between the two, or if you're lucky enough to hear them, that'll really give it away.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's even I think at least speaking for myself, in the places like the North Woods, I'm still stumped occasionally when I see a large black corvid looking bird, and sometimes it does take a vocalization or a really good look at its tail shape that sort of wedge-shaped tail that the raven has.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and then, so the story doesn't end here. Could you kind of tell us a bit more about, well, first of all, it's awesome that you got video this time because that confirmed the sighting. And if there are any skeptics out there, I'm sure they're skeptics no more. Um, but later in the week, the story doesn't end. Later in the week, something else happened, right?
Yeah, that's definitely right. Uh, 3 days after that, the 19th, um, quite a similar situation from almost the same exact location and exact flight path. I can hear that croak of a raven again, and you know, I'm thinking this already happened once this year. Is this really going to happen a second time in less than a week? What's going on? And I look over to see not just one, but a pair of these ravens come flying into view. And nicely enough, they even took about 2 minutes or so to perch in one of the trees in the south part of the blowout right by the tower. Maybe about, I don't know, zero point 0.2 miles away from me or so. And uh, once again, two crows came on in and really did not like them being there. And they were dive bombing the perched ravens until they eventually made their way farther southwest along the way and left. And then it
Yeah.
still doesn't end. Um,
Go ahead.
I'm trying to remember the date of the next time. I think it might have been 2 days after that. Um, Nicely enough, I was able to share the experience with Brendan Grube. Um, Both him and I were out there at the tower, and much to our surprise, two common ravens again flew into view from the east and went west of us. We could see them over Porter Beach, where a whole flock of about 8 crows were chasing them around and did not like them being. um, so my guess as to what's going on then is, that this it seems a lot more likely, at least, that this has probably been the same two individuals rather than five going past me in 1 week. I
Right.
have not seen them since that Sunday, I believe it was now. But I think for at least a week, there was a pair just hanging around nearby Indiana Dunes area and possibly are still there.
That's incredible, and if they're planning to stick around, that would be, I think, the first. I don't even know if we should go so far as to suggest it would be a breeding record, but at least maybe summertime record, perhaps in Indiana. If we do get to that point and they're still around, going back, about I think 100 years or so. And I recall you sharing with me previously that down actually it was southern Indiana where I think ravens had last nested in the state. Interestingly enough, which parallels Illinois because I think the last raven nest in Illinois was down in more the south to southeast part of the state near Effingham. So
Mm,
that's
yeah,
kind of interesting too. But
yeah.
yeah, it's an incredible story. I also just want anybody who sees this to get a sense of what you do each day at the tower, and if you could describe your day a little bit, what time you get there, um, and maybe give us a little sampling late March of what you're looking for. I know it'll change a lot over time, but I, you know, or give us a few examples from recent days even. It'd be great to hear.
Yeah, sure. So, I'm out there almost every day. And being that it's spring migration now, the more favorable days are going to be days with the wind either coming from the south or southeast or southwest. There could be some movement going on a north wind day, but it's usually going to be a whole lot less active than if it was a southerly wind. And I get there a little before sunrise, mainly catch that morning flight when potentially thousands of birds on a good day, even tens of thousands of birds, are all kind of flying either west or east along that Indiana lakefront to eventually make their way around Lake Michigan on one side or the other as they head north. Um, and it's pretty interesting. I do it for the whole spring migration season for about 3 months, and every week is different. I really kind of think every week in that period, at least one or a few species will have their peak counts. Throughout March, that's going to really be uh, when most of the red-winged blackbirds and common grackles go through. Early March, we had a whole lot of greater white-fronted geese go through the area. In fact, 2020 easily is now the highest season total of white-fronted geese that really kind of seem to be uh, expanding their range a bit. March is definitely the peak for the sandhill crane and many waterfowl species and gull species. Um, into April is when most of the swallow species will come through at that point. Um, there will be some days that have pretty mind-blowing numbers of flyby northern flicker or yellow-bellied sapsucker, which are pretty fun to count three-digit numbers of, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
yeah,
kind of hard to fathom when when one might be delighted by seeing one sapsucker in their neighborhood to think about a few hundred. So,
oh yeah, yeah. The I don't know for sure what the all-time high count is for sapsucker, but it's a three-digit number for sure. And last year on April 9th, the state record and really one of the highest uh, single day counts in the world happened for flicker with 1,239 individual flickers flying by that day.
oh,
Um,
that was one of the biggest one-day counts in the world ever, or in
as
2019.
far as I can see, um, I've only been able to find one single day count record higher than that, and that dates back to the 1990s and the fall migration in Connecticut. So,
Okay,
as far as I know, yeah, that's
incredible.
one of the highest for sure. But early April and already now is usually when, you know, big counts of robin are
Right.
coming through. In fact, uh, on Thursday morning, it was at least the Green Tower's second highest count of American robin with 10,721 robins flew by that morning. That was incredible. I have never seen a robin flight like that in my life.
Holy cow! Wait, so that
Oh
was
yeah,
this week?
that was Thursday. Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, that was the day after the really like warmer day that we had. Is that I think if I recall correctly.
Yeah.
Um,
Overnight didn't really get cold. It was already like 50 degrees outside at dawn.
hmm
So, which is the warmest start of a morning we've had this year so far, I think. And it was a 20,000 bird day, and 53% of them were American robins. It was pretty incredible. But
Wow.
then you get to May, and May is when you'll have, usually in the first half, some of the highest counts of blue jays migrating, sometimes into four-digit numbers. You'll start getting a whole lot more of the warblers coming through for sure. And then, some other fun high numbers um, have happened there, like Baltimore Oriole, Eastern Kingbird, both of which are three-digit numbers for each, um,
Wow.
and quite a lot of other species. In fact, it's possible if you go on the right day, and usually the first 2 weeks of May sometime, to have a day where you just stay at the tower for about 6 hours and get 100 or more species just from that one location. I think the record was done by Brendan a few years ago, who had 109 just from there. Last year, I had a day with 105 just from the tower, so it can be done.
And but just practically, what uh, how readily is it possible to see birds? I mean, you're standing in one place and you're kind of limited to the habitat right around you. Although I think when these big movements happen, habitat sort of almost falls by the wayside and the birds are just everywhere. But what are the practical considerations for, um, for a moment when like a three-digit number of Orioles start coming through? Like I just I can't even fathom that.
Well, yeah, like with those, let's use Baltimore Orioles as an example. Most of them are just flyby birds that um, were traveling along the lakefront, you know, and appearing to just be migrating. And it's not like you saw a whole flock of Orioles, because they're not really known to be a flocking bird. But you know, over the course of like 4 or 6 or 8 hours, you just get an Oriole migrating by along the lakefront over and over until you've broken 100, or maybe even
I see.
broken 200 or 300. So,
Right. But they're not, but they're like, are we talking like, are they dozens of feet off the ground flying over? Or are they, because I mean, are they on the ground in trees or all of the
oh,
above?
it really kind of depends. Some things are um, flying closer to the lake than the tower, and even lower than the height of the tower. Sometimes things of the same species are high above. So, you gotta have eyes in every direction if it's possible sometimes. So,
Um, wow. I think it's incredible, and it's a well-kept secret there. And to me, I mean, I know there's the Indiana Dunes Birding Festival that's become a real, standout festival. Uh, although one worries whether that's going to take place this year. But I think it's incredible, and we're so lucky to have such a gem of a place there nearby, as well as places like my local favorite and so many others' favorite, Montrose Point. So yeah, that's it's really helpful to hear that, Kyle, and what you're doing is so important, and especially right now when I think we're about to run into a spell where we're going to have a little bit less data about this migration because because of the limitations of social distancing. So yeah, I just appreciate you taking some time out, Kyle, and helping and sharing the story, and then helping to educate us. And hopefully, I'll have a chance to check back with you soon as I continue to put together some of these pieces, just to kind of you know as a fun way to be almost birding virtually, but also just to kind of keep people posted throughout the spring in this kind of unusual situation we're all in. So I thank you very much.
Oh, well, you're very welcome, and I I guess I appreciate hearing that there's people that appreciate what I'm doing.
Oh yeah, heck yeah, and yeah, kudos to the Indiana folks who have made it a point to have you the last now 3 years on the tower there. That's just super cool. Um, and yeah, so uh, thank you. I'm gonna pause now, and yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, Bob.